Before he became a legend, Spartacus was a Thracian. Not a king, not yet a hero, just a man with sword-calloused hands and fire in his blood. He fought for Rome once, as an auxiliary in their wars, but the empire he bled for repaid him with chains. Accused of desertion or defiance, the truth is lost to time, Spartacus was branded a traitor, sold into slavery, shipped across the Adriatic like livestock. There, in the red dust of Capua, he was bought by the ludus of Lentulus Batiatus. Batiatus's ludus was no sanctuary, it was a factory of death. Here, men were not trained, they were forged, under the lash, among screams. Only the strong lived. The broken became sport. Spartacus entered this world not as a warrior, but as a commodity, stripped of name, rank, dignity. Yet in his silence there was resolve. From Gauls to Numidians, Syrians to Iberians, the ludus held men of every tongue. Yet all spoke one language, survival. Spartacus endured, learned, adapted, not just in the arena but in spirit. While others shattered, he waited. And then came the matches. His first kill was not for glory, it was for breath. Each duel was a choice, die a slave or live a killer. He chose life, again and again and again. The crowd began to know his name, so did Batiatus. Spartacus became more than an investment, he became a star. But stars can spark fires. Beneath the surface, something stirred. Spartacus saw the cracks in the system, the way the guards grew lazy, the arrogance of their Roman masters. He knew war when he saw it, even if it had not yet begun. Then came the catalyst. A slave named Crixus, a Gaul, retaliated. He struck a guard who assaulted another man. The punishment was death, but before the execution, Spartacus intervened. The revolt began with iron stolen from the kitchens, with fists and fury. 70 men against dozens of guards. The ludus erupted into a war zone. They seized the armory, broke the lock gates. Flames licked the sky. By noon, Capua had lost its champions. Rome thought it was a minor embarrassment, an isolated breach. The Senate scoffed, but Spartacus knew better. They were not fugitives. They were an army in its infancy. They took refuge on Mount Vesuvius. From there, they struck. Small farms, outposts, armories. Slaves flocked to them, hundreds, then thousands. Not warriors, not yet, but desperate, angry, alive. Rome finally saw the danger. An ex-gladiator commanding an army of slaves? Unthinkable, impossible, unacceptable. They sent a praetor with 2 legions to crush the rebellion. Spartacus turned terrain into a weapon. He led a surprise counterattack, descending the mountain by rope down sheer cliffs, flanking the Romans in the dead of night. The praetor fled in disgrace. Rome had underestimated a man who knew nothing of their politics, but everything about their cruelty. What began as escape became structure, discipline, purpose. Spartacus did not want to pillage Rome. He wanted to leave it behind, to march his people north, over the Alps, to freedom. But not all agreed. Crixus, filled with fire and vengeance, refused to flee. He believed in conquest, in retribution. He and 30,000 followers broke from Spartacus. They were slaughtered weeks later by Roman forces. Spartacus wept for his friend, but he did not waver. By now his forces swelled to over 70,000. They defeated legion after legion. Rome's pride was bleeding. He was no longer a slave, no longer a fugitive. He was a general, a leader of free men, and Rome was beginning to tremble. The year was 72 BCE. The unthinkable had come to pass. Spartacus, once a nameless slave in chains, now commanded an army larger than many Roman provinces. And worse, he kept winning. In Rome, the Senate boiled with panic. Defeated praetors returned in disgrace. Maps, once used for conquest, now charted catastrophe. Rome, for the first time in living memory, faced an enemy not at her gates, but within. And still, Spartacus marched. This was no rabble. Under Spartacus, farmers became fighters. Miners became medics. His army grew in discipline, not just in number. At its peak, 70,000 men, women, and children. Refugees of empire. Every freed soul ablaze against tyranny. They marched north, toward the Alps, toward freedom. Some say Spartacus wished only to escape, that he longed for Thrace, not Roman blood. But freedom demanded more than retreat. Rome responded with 2 fresh legions, Lucius Gellius and Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus. Their orders were clear: surround the rebels, crush them between hammer and anvil. But Spartacus had studied Roman strategy, and he had no intention of playing by their rules. Gellius expected a straight march. Instead, he found a trap. Spartacus attacked first, striking from the flanks with surgical brutality. Lentulus arrived too late. His rear was overrun in minutes. 2 Roman legions. Routed, the Senate was humiliated. Rome had been bloodied before, but never by slaves. That's when Rome turned to a man of ambition. Marcus Crassus, the richest man in the Republic. Ruthless, calculating. He volunteered to do what generals could not, to make Rome feared again. Crassus rebuilt discipline with blood, revived ancient punishments like decimation, where 1 in every 10 men was killed by their comrades. He forged his army into a hammerhead and set his sights on Spartacus. Meanwhile, Spartacus hesitated. Some accounts say his men refused to cross the Alps. Others say he turned back by choice, to strike at Rome itself. Either way, he reversed course. The decision would prove fatal. Crassus built a colossal trench across the peninsula, a wall of stone, ditch, and iron. He meant to starve the rebellion into surrender. For weeks, Spartacus' army endured, hungry, sick, and cornered. Spartacus saw what was coming. He offered terms. Crassus refused. Rome would accept nothing but annihilation, so Spartacus did what he always had. He broke the rules. Under cover of darkness, the rebels attacked. They breached the Roman wall, escaped the trap. But their window to flee was closing. The Senate, fearing Crassus alone might win too much glory, sent Pompey to aid him. Spartacus now faced 2 titans. His army diminished, morale fading. The noose was tightening. Still, Spartacus chose to fight, not for victory, but for vengeance, for dignity, for the fire they kindled in the heart of empire. He refused to run. The final battle erupted at the Silarus River. Outnumbered, surrounded, Spartacus and his men charged, straight into the teeth of Rome. He is said to have fought to the heart of the Roman line, seeking Crassus himself, before falling, surrounded by corpses. Spartacus's body was never found. His legacy carved into every scarred survivor. Rome crucified over 6,000 prisoners along the Appian Way, a warning, a monument of fear. But fear is not the same as silence. The rebellion was crushed, but the fire Spartacus lit, that a slave could defy an empire, burned on through the ages, not as a failure, as a symbol. The sun rose over a field of silence. The rebellion was over. Rome had its victory. Spartacus was dead, or so they believed. His body never found. His name never forgotten. Marcus Licinius Crassus had won. But it was a victory without glory. The final battle had cost Rome dearly. Nearly 6,000 rebels were captured alive. What followed was not justice. It was a message. From Capua to Rome, the Appian Way became a river of wood and agony. Every 100 paces, a cross. Spartacus's army, displayed in death. A warning to the world. Defy Rome and suffer. Yet even in victory, Crassus was denied triumph. Pompey, having arrived late to the rebellion, claimed credit for its conclusion. The Senate, ever political, gave him the accolades. Crassus received a muted ovation and a lesson in Roman ambition. Spartacus faded into history, but the tremor he caused did not. Rome learned that its empire was not unshakable, that beneath its marble and discipline there lay fear, and fear has a long memory. Of Spartacus's army, few survived. The ones who escaped disappeared into myth. Some say a handful reached Gaul, others vanished into the east, but the legacy did not end with them. Across the empire, slaves began to dream, not of escape, but of rebellion. Of one man who refused to kneel. His name became a secret prayer. A fire whispered across chains. Uprisings flared in the years that followed. None reached the scale of Spartacus's revolt, but each bore his spark. Rome grew more brutal in response, yet even fear could not erase memory. Even among Rome's elite, Spartacus lived on. His story taught senators about the cost of cruelty. It taught generals the limits of steel. It taught rulers that one man can defy the system and shake its foundations. As for Crassus, his ambition led him east, to Parthia, to Carrhae. There, in the desert, he met his end, surrounded, humiliated. His defeat echoed the very rebellion he once crushed. Rome did not end with Spartacus. It expanded, conquered, enslaved thousands more. But the fear of rebellion never left its heart. The name Spartacus was banned from gladiator schools, his story censored in forums, yet legends outlive empires. Spartacus fought for no throne, no crown. He died nameless to history, but eternal in spirit. He proved that even the lowliest can roar, that freedom is worth the impossible.
And for one flicker in time, he shook the greatest empire the world had ever known.
In the ashes of empires, stories survive. Some rise again, others are only whispered. This is one of them. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe to Ashes and Empires, Real Stories, Lost Empires.